Hello, my name's Nigel Penny, and I'm one of the LEORON consulting team working with Merafic Management on a variety of aspects of your Towards Excellence program. I'm sure you've heard about this from your president and CEO in the various company videos and presentations that have taken place. Our training program today specifically focuses on one of the key aspects of the employee performance management system. That is SMART objective training. Let me introduce this session to you and talk about what we're going to cover during this training program. And in fact, why are we doing this now? Well, you may or may not know that Merafic plans to introduce a new employee performance management system from 2020. That new performance management system, or PMS, you currently know it as EPR today, is actually going to ensure that employees have clearly defined personal objectives that are very closely linked to the business objectives of the company. By defining and developing clear performance objectives, not only will you be very clear as to what the company expects from you, but you'll also have the confidence of knowing that if you deliver on these objectives, the company will achieve its overall business goals. Of course, there are many other aspects involved in a performance management system, and we'll be covering these in a series of additional trainings and presentations during the course of this year. We've already reviewed existing performance goals for employees that are currently within your existing EPR system. So let me give you some feedback on that from our perspective. First of all, in our review, it's not always been clear how your individual objectives in the EPR system actually align to the wider business goals. Clearly, if we don't know how objectives align to wider business goals, then we can't be actually sure that we're doing the right things. Also, there needs to be a clear definition within the organization of just what is an objective. And we need to make sure that objectives give you the clarity and understanding so that you know exactly what is required. This is a process that we call SMART objective setting. And in our training today, we're going to show you how to set smarter personal objectives within the EPR. On the current slide, you'll see some examples of real objectives that are currently in people's EPR personal objective goals for this year. I've got 5 examples there. Firstly, better ways of communication. Well, we can't argue that that's a good thing to do, but is that really a clear objective? How will we know if we've actually achieved that? It's open to a lot of interpretation. It's not obvious how you measure it. There's no time frame associated with it. So I think you can probably see that this particular goal is far from a SMART goal in terms of a performance objective. Let's look at some of the others. Providing legal solutions to handle critical situations, marketing and finance training, implement SAP, better ways of coordination. They all sound like good things to do, but clearly there's not a lot of clarity, and different people could interpret those goals in very different ways. So it doesn't really help you as an employee if these are the type of goals that are on your EPR personal objective system. And this is a set of real examples from the 2019 EPR goals that we've looked at for all employees. So what are we going to do in this training program? Well, first of all, we're going to introduce you to the idea of how to set better objectives for the EPR. You're going to understand how to make those objectives clear, measurable, and a whole variety of other components that fall under this SMART criteria. Don't worry if you haven't heard about SMART before. We'll explain all the different aspects of it during this training. One of the important aspects of the training as well is that you'll also understand how to link these goals to departmental objectives. Why do we need to link our personal goals to departmental objectives? Well, it's pretty obvious that we all perform different roles in the organization. All of our roles are important, but they reflect a very different variety of business skills and competencies that we bring to the organization. Some of us are accountants, some of us are engineers, some of us are HR specialists. No matter what our particular job role or specialty within the organization, we need to make sure that whatever we're doing is directly aligned to the wider organizational goals and company strategy, so that ultimately we're all working together like a laser to actually deliver real benefit to Marafic. Sometimes people are a little confused as to what should actually be in a personal objective. Well, the first thing to be aware of is that a personal objective is not the same as a job description. A job description actually says what tasks do we perform as part of our normal day-to-day activities. For example, if you think of an accounts payable clerk, a job description will probably be process supplier invoices, check that the necessary approvals have been obtained, and then pass those invoices for payment. But is that really the total of what we want an accounts payable clerk to achieve? Is that really an outcome, or is it really an output of the various tasks? Let's think about actually what this accounts payable clerk delivers to the organization and why his role is particularly important. An accounts payable clerk is responsible for ensuring that our suppliers are paid on time. What happens if we don't pay our suppliers on time? Well, the likelihood is we'll suffer company reputation failure. People will say Marafic is not a good company to deal with, they don't pay on time. But very importantly, those suppliers may stop supplying us in the future. And that could lead to a whole variety of complications in terms of parts not being available for maintenance when required, etc., etc. So when we think about a set of objectives, personal objectives for an accounts payable clerk, we shouldn't just be thinking about the tasks that he performs in processing invoices. We should actually be saying what we want that accounts payable clerk to do is we want him to pay suppliers on time and with the correct amount. And it's the difference between these type of objectives where we actually define an outcome, such as pay our suppliers on time and pay our suppliers the correct amount, that we should be thinking of as the content for a personal performance objective. So how can we design better personal performance objectives in the EPR system? What we're going to introduce you to is the concept of what we call the SMART criteria. SMART, S.M.A.R.T, stands for 5 different components that we should look to build into each of our personal performance objectives. Let's look at each of those in a little more detail. The S in SMART stands for specific. That means that our individual personal objectives need to be quite detailed and need to be quite exact in terms of what is it that we're actually required to deliver. The M in SMART stands for measurable. Measurable means we should be able to develop a key performance indicator or some other form of measurement that will actually be able to establish whether we have actually delivered on this personal objective or not. And of course, a component of any key performance indicator is that we must have a target level of performance that we're going to try and achieve. The A stands for attainable. That's sometimes a little more difficult to understand. By attainable, we don't mean that we should set ourselves easy personal objectives that we know we can do without any effort. They should still be a stretch. They should still challenge us to actually go the extra mile. But they should be within the realms of realistic. Can we actually deliver on these? Is it possible? Do we know how we can actually achieve this result? So remember, attainable doesn't mean easy, but it does mean that we have a good fighting chance of actually delivering on this particular objective. The R in SMART stands for relevant. This means that it's an important thing to do. Why is it important? Well, because it should link to one of the key objectives within our department. So there should be a check that what we're doing is actually things that are going to add value to the department and ultimately to add value to the organization. There's one final piece in the jigsaw to consider when you're setting your individual personal performance objectives. We call that the 4 perspectives. When you look at your departmental plan and your departmental goals, you'll probably notice that there are 4 different categories of goals that are used to express what the department is trying to achieve. The first of those is what we call the financial perspective. That deals with aspects such as revenue generation, cost control, and management. All of those things that impact the financial result of our business. The second component of goal that you see will deal with customers, service levels. This could relate to external customers, or it could relate to our internal colleagues in other departments to whom we provide support services. The third component, or perspective as we call it, is the process perspective. This will deal with improvements in key processes. It could be improving the time to complete a task, as an example, or improving the quality of output in a particular process. The fourth component is related to people and how we develop our people. So when you're developing your own individual performance objectives, here's a useful checklist that you can look at and see, have I covered all of the ways that I really make a contribution to my department? Obviously, you don't necessarily have to have an individual personal performance objective for each one of the four perspectives that we just described. But it's certainly worth thinking about, does my role impact cost or revenue within the department? Do I provide services to customers, and is part of my personal objectives to improve the quality of those services? Can I make improvements in process efficiency? And what am I doing in terms of developing the quality of people in the organization? All of these are things to think about as you consider what are the most important individual personal performance objectives that I need to set within the EPR.